And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is James Bonato. He is the producer and editor of the documentary film Peace on Both Sides of the Gate, which is about NDEs. James, thank you for being my guest and welcome.
My pleasure.
All right, James, well, how long have you been doing documentary films?
Well, I guess it was my senior year in high school. It was 1979. And I got interested in filmmaking then. And I was messing around with just everything, documentary films, sports videos, just anything goofy. I mean, it was high school, right? And back then, we shot on Super 8 film. And when we used to make edits, we used to take a blade and cut the film. That's how we edited back then. Of course, now it's all digital. And so, quite frankly, documentaries really professionally started for me 2015. And it has continued strongly into 2021 with my latest documentary film, Peace on Both Sides of the Gate.
That's great. So how did you get the idea of doing a film about NDEs?
Well, first of all, in order for me to do a documentary film, I have to be motivated and driven. And let me tell you something, Jeff. When I get inspired, baby. Mm-hmm. Okay? Anything that has to do with making a difference in the world, which NDEs do, I am motivated to do something about that, and includes filmmaking. And just, if there's any way that I can touch your heart, or if there's a chance I can move you, that's going to drive me to make a documentary film. Because you never know what people are going through, Jeff. And sometimes a documentary film can help that. I have the talent, and I want to put it to good use. And that drives me. And I get driven a lot. And I think it would, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm letting you in on this, but I just feel that it takes most people or other people days and days of sweat and soul searching to come up with the same inspiration I get over my morning cup of orange juice. I don't know how that happened, but there it is, Jeff. And as far as the NDE film, here's how it came about, which is pretty much the same way almost all of my documentary films come about. I had just finished making The Smith Perspective, which is a documentary I filmed that I did about a year and a half ago. And I was wondering at the time, what's going to be my next film? And how am I going to top The Smith Perspective? Because The Smith Perspective, quite frankly, went over very, very well with the public. It has a lot of accolades. And I can't believe I just let that slip out. I'm so embarrassed. But quite frankly, the film, okay, you don't really find the film. You don't wonder about it. The film finds you. And that's what happened with Peace on Both Sides of the Gate. That film found me with the NDEs. Now, here's what happened. I was just sitting one night chilling on YouTube, and I'm just going through some videos, and I come across Anita Moorjani. And you're familiar with her?
Yes, I am.
What NDE isn't familiar? Right, NDE.
I'm familiar with most of them, but I actually have not had her as a guest.
And that's because she's very hard to track down and to get. She has like a firewall between her and the public. And I tried, but I didn't get her. But who cares? She's the one who inspired me. And you know what happens when you finish a YouTube video, right? There's other videos on the side that are like the one that you just watched. And I said, NDEs, my gosh. Now, I knew it as near-death experience. And all through my life, I've heard about them. I heard about you coming out of your body and you're looking down on the operating table and you can see yourself. I know about the tunnel and the white light. I had heard all of those things and they fascinated me. But at that point, they kind of just went in through one ear. It settled. I thought it was fascinating. And then I kind of moved on. But with Anita's Moorjani's YouTube, I said, let me watch the next one. The next one was Chris Batts. Okay. After I finished Chris Batts, it was a done deal. I said, I am going to make this film on NDEs. I wanted to make something where people normally say, well, gee, I haven't the slightest idea of what happens when we die. Well, after you watch my documentary film, you are going to have the slightest idea of what happens next because I painted in that way. So after Chris Batts, I said, I don't know how I'm going to make this film. I don't know who the characters are going to be. I don't know where to start, but it's going to get done. And I'm going to do research on it. And I'm going to really, really try hard, which is really the blueprints for every documentary film that I've ever done. You don't give up. The first month is always miserable. It's rejection after rejection after rejection. And you try and find NDEs and you try and find groups and you find websites and you just push until it gives. And that's what I always do. And I get knocked down to the canvas many, many times, not only on filmmaking, but, just in life. But I always get up. And after you've been knocked down a couple of times and you get up on a regular basis, it becomes a wonderful habit. And then you find that you can accomplish anything, including a documentary film that might seem impossible. And I tell you one thing. You know what the rejection reminded me? It reminded me of all the girls I was trying to date in high school. And they kept rejecting me. But, if you keep trying, you finally succeed. Now, it might be the hardest thing that you've ever done. If it's hard, like this documentary film was hard to make, it's worth it. Because if it's easy, probably not worth doing, Jeff. But peace on both sides of the gate was worth doing. So here's what I did. I was searching around and I found Chris Batts on Facebook. And I messaged him a couple of times and I was going through other motions. And I don't want to say that I was harassing Chris Batts, but actually, Jeff, let's call it that. That's what I was doing. I was harassing Chris Batts. And I don't know what happened. I probably just did it so many times. He goes, oh my gosh, who is this James Bonato guy? Let me give in and I'll contact him. So he did. And we had a wonderful phone call. And during that phone call, I wanted to get two things across to him. Number one, when you talk to NDEers, a lot of them are a little apprehensive at first, and their apprehension is warranted. And you know why it's warranted, because some people, whether they're filmmakers or not, they want to discredit them or discount them or challenge them on the NDE. I wanted to let Chris Batts know that I wasn't there to challenge him. I'm on his side. I'm going to make a film that tells you, like, don't be afraid of death. Okay. It's all about love. That's going to be the keystone of this documentary film was that. I wanted to make sure he knew that I was on his side. And I also wanted to make sure that he knew that I was a good documentarian. And what I did was I sent him The Smith Perspective, which was the documentary film I had finished about a year before. And I sent it to him just to impress him, because I wanted to make him know or him feel that I was good. And I must have done something right, because all of a sudden he was on board. And I was delighted that he was on board. And then I told him, I said, Chris, I want 4 NDEers, okay? When you make a documentary film and you're doing it on multiple subjects, you better know what you're doing and you better pick the right number. And here's how I came up with 4. If you pick, well, let's say it's 2, okay? If you have one person and you have another person, you're doing a documentary film. With those 2 people, it's like, well, what did you do? You found 2 people who kind of think the same way. 2 isn't very good. 3 is a good number. 3 is a great trilogy. You can go back and forth in that little triangle. And actually, that's how I did my first film, which was called 3 Cameos. And I followed 3 people around for about a year. Okay. But with the NDEers, I wanted to do 4. Okay. And if you want to push it to 4, you better know infrastructure. And I know infrastructure very well. That's my forte, so to speak. Because if you go A, B, C, D, and then you go back to A, you better make sure that it's familiar. Like, wait a minute, we're back to this person. Who is this person? Oh, yeah, this was the person who was ice climbing a mountain. Oh, yes, I remember that guy. And usually when you tell the story, it's not linear. It's not A, B, C, D, A, B, C. It's usually A, B, C, D, B, D, A, C. It's how you tell that story. And it's never right in a row. But I better make sure that these four people, when you get into the film, they're familiar with them. There's separation between the four, and you tell the story correctly. And Chris Batts said, fine, I'm your first of four. Let me help you get the other three. So right off the bat, he came up with Jennifer Dean. And I called Jennifer Dean, and apparently Chris Batts had prepped her on me. And I talked to Jennifer Dean, and she is just a delight. And we talked for about an hour, and she was on board. So I had her. And Jennifer Dean, who did she give me? She gave me Brooke Grove. So Brooke Grove was going to be number 3. And I did the same thing. I emailed Brooke Grove. And Brooke Grove is kind of a busy person. She's a transpersonal psychologist. She has kids, and she's got a busy schedule. And she goes, James, yes, let's talk, but I have to do it a week from next Thursday at 3:45. That's my next opening. And I said, fine. So I will wait for you. Then Chris Batts got me my 4th person and final person, which was Sharon Milliman. And I've seen Sharon Milliman's interview with you, and we can both agree and tell the public that she is probably the most dearest, gentle, warmest person I've ever met in my life. I fell in love with her 30 seconds after I met her on the phone. And when I met her in person, it was the same thing. So I had my 4, even though Brooke Grove technically wasn't on board. Well, guess what happened? In the meantime, Chris Batts laid another name on me. And it's somebody who is very, very well known in the NDE community. And that name is Peter Panagore. So I had read about him. I had seen a couple of his videos, and I knew about Peter. So I said, well, wow, that would be a feather in my hat if I were to get him in the film. So I called him, and we talked for 45 minutes to an hour, and he was on board. So now I had the 4. I had the 4 officially. Brooke Grove was kind of odd man out. And it was only for the reason that I couldn't talk to her right away. She had said, hey, a week from next Thursday. So I was very excited about the 4. I was not excited about giving Brooke Grove the bad news. And when we talked on the phone, it was the first thing that I said. I said, hey, Brooke, I'm so sorry. I have the 4. And I can't do 5 for the same reason I just told you about the balance in 4 is right on the cusp of the acceptable amount. So she said, okay, well, you know, two other people asked me to be in their documentary films, and I turned them down. And I wanted to do your film. Said, well, why do you want to do my film? What's so special about me? But she said, I don't know, she saw some of my work, or she heard good things about me from Jennifer Dean. So I felt bad about that. And I said, Brooke, let's just talk about your NDE. Don't leave anything out. I want to know exactly every detail of your NDE. And I want to know what you came back with, what pearls of wisdoms, and what you can give people. Let's just talk. I mean, that's the least that we can do. So I was kind of hoping that she would be a dud or something normal or something jejune or something. And of course she starts talking, and I'm like, oh my God, who is this person? She's dynamic. She's intelligent. She's interesting. She's got an incredible NDE. Oh my gosh. And the more she talked, the more upset I got because I had the 4 people and I couldn't include her. So by the time we got to the end of the conversation, which was just amazing, I said, Brooke, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. I mean, you're incredible. Maybe we can do like a separate little baby mini documentary film on you. I don't know. But I got a plan. Here was my plan. I was going to go interview the first 4, okay? Now, I live in Maryland, all right? And my first stop was Peter Panagore, which is in Maine. And that was a 10-hour drive to Maine. So I would interview him first. And then on my way back home, I would stop off in New Jersey and film Jennifer Dean. And then I would go home. And then the next stop would be, I would wait a couple of days and do Sharon Milliman, who lives in West Virginia. And thank God, because that's only one state over from Maryland. So I was delighted about that. And I said, then my fourth and final stop will be Chris Batts in California. You live in California, Brooke. Now, as we both know, California is the big state, but they weren't real close to each other, but they weren't that far apart. And I said, Brooke, after I interview and film Chris Batts, why don't I stay in California an extra day? I've got my camera. Why don't I film you? Okay, well, let's just see what happens. Maybe one of the other four will drop out. Who knows? Okay. And she was so accommodating. She's such a sweetie pie. And she goes, sure, let's do that. And that's exactly what happened. So for Brooke's interview, we met at some hotel, I think it was a Marriott or something, and I set up my tripod. And with her interview, it was just a one camera shoot. With the others, it was two cameras. There was B-rolls, there was cutaway. And I didn't slow her down. She told her NDE story, which is amazing. I'm sure you've heard it. It's incredible. And I'm just going to let her go. And the same thing happened. I was like, well, maybe she won't be so good. Of course, she knocks it out of the park. I mean, the camera loves Brooke Grove. Some people just have it. She has, I don't know if she knows that she has it, but the camera loves her. And we went like an hour, and I finally ended, and I said, cut. And I said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll see what happens. And she was so sweet. She goes, okay, James, don't sweat it. You know, whatever happens is meant to be. And I go, okay, great. So I was packing up, and I had to go to the airport to catch my plane. And apparently I'm the only American citizen who doesn't understand Uber. And so Brooke says, don't worry, I have an app. An Uber app, and I can order you a ride. And that's what she did. And they transported me to the airport. And I was thinking about how great her interview was. And then I was on the plane, and I'm flying back to Maryland, to the East Coast. And right in the middle of the flight, I think I was over Missouri. No, maybe it was Kansas. But I'm going over, and I says, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this film just the way I planned it, with the 4 NDEs. And I'm going to go back and forth, and you're going to intimately know these 4 people. You're going to know their NDE. You're going to know how they feel. You know what their message is. You know their pearls of wisdom. Okay. I'm going to go back and forth, and you're going to know all 4 characters great. Then about 3/4 of the way through the film, boom, I'm going to drop in Brooke Grove out of the blue. Okay. I'm going to just pop her out of thin air. And people will go, oh, wait a minute, who's this 5th person? What happened? But I've already established the 4 so they could concentrate on Brooke. And that's exactly what happened. She told her NDE, she got her pearls of wisdom. She didn't get quite as much exposure as the other 4, but that's how the film came to be.
I like that idea, how you dropped Brooke later in the film. I think that's a great idea.
You'll see it works really well when you see it.
What did you learn about NDEs that you didn't already know after interviewing these people?
A ton. I studied it all I wanted, but when I met those 5, I came out with something very, very emotional. And I hope people, and I want to explain it. Mm-hmm. And I want to tell you exactly why I did the film and why I think it's an incredible film. And just to set it up, anybody can see the film. It's free. All right. I have a website dedicated to it. If anybody wants to grab a pencil, I'll tell you the URL. It's www. I'm kidding. It's www.peaceonbothsides on both sides of the gate.com. Peace on Both Sides of the Gate is the name of the film, and it's all one word. There's no spaces in between there. So that's how people can see the film. So you asked a good question, and I was tempted to tell you everything that I learned from the film, making it. But I really only, at least for this part, I just want to limit myself to tell you about the 5 subjects and the pearls of wisdom that they brought back, which is unbelievable. It's probably not unbelievable for you because you've known NDEs forever and ever and ever. I don't know how many podcasts you've done, but this is just not a film about their NDE. It's about what they bring back, because these people came out of their NDE with brilliant insight. And I tried to expose those insights on the film. I'm sorry I'm being secretive about it because I want people to see it. But I tried very hard to tie in what they brought back to the daily trials and tribulations that we go through, because we haven't had an NDE. But I wanted you to feel what it was like to have their NDE. And I did a little bit of reenacting for the NDEs. And we all have our own challenges. And here's the interesting thing. Yes, we have challenges. And guess what? The NDEers, they challenge us in the film. They challenge the audience. And I love challenges. All my real friends challenge me. They don't let me get away with any crap. You feel me? Jeff, you got friends like that?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So there are some tidbits I want to share with you, and I want to share with you what I got back, what I got out of it, which was a ton. So some of the topics challenged are forgiveness. And Jeff, I'm sure you know forgiveness is a big thing that people come back from their NDE with. And Sharon Milliman hits you really hard defining why forgiveness is important, why you need to do it. It doesn't matter how you feel sometimes. She drives it home very, very hard. Okay. Jennifer Dean tells you exactly why you need to love yourself in order to love others. Something big. And she says it very eloquently. And she is also hard-nosed about it too. She doesn't pull any punches. Brooke Grove explains why it's totally okay. It's totally okay to feel sorrow when you're losing someone or if you've just lost someone. And she explains the beauty of it. A lot of people are scared of death, and it's actually a beautiful thing. She explains it very well, and it gives everybody hope. Peter Panagore goes into great detail about the responsibility he feels that he has when he came back from his NDE. And he brought home the fact that there should be no fear of dying. And a lot of people on this earth are afraid of dying. They're not going to be after this film. Okay. And he also explained of the large community there is in NDE. I hadn't the slightest idea. What's the latest count, Jeff? Something like it's in the hundreds of thousands.
I've heard that 5% of the population had an NDE.
Really? Oh, that's a lot. Well, there you go. See, that's another reason why I made this film. If only 5% have, then I need to tell the other 95%. And I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it very well. So that's what Peter Panagore drove home. All 5 of them drove home much more than the things that I just went over in the last couple of minutes. They all brought a lot to the table. Then there's Chris Batts. Chris Batts tackles why people are afraid to love. And he told it in a perspective that I had never considered. Okay. And it hit me hard because I've always been frustrated with people who can't love. And it's probably because I can love so easily. I mean, I can express my love as easily as moving through the air. And I get frustrated with people who can't love. And Chris Batts goes into that. But here's the kicker. Well, this was the kicker for me. Chris Batts went into a very, very touchy situation, tells about a touchy situation when people that are friends of yours or loved ones, or maybe even family, they beat you to the ground. And it's so deep and so bad that you think that you're never going to get over it for the rest of your life. You think it's going to stay there. Well, Jeff, interestingly, I made this film in the very lowest point of my life. And I'm going to try and explain it a little bit without getting too emotional. But I lost two friendships of two people who I stood up for, and I believed in, and this went on for several years. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but I'll flip to the last page. They did something very unfair to me. And those ripples were so bad, so far reaching, that I thought I would never recover. But Chris Batts was right. Chris Batts tells us that if you hang in there, it doesn't last forever. You think it's going to last forever, but it doesn't. You have to be strong. You don't kowtow. You outlast that pain. Okay. That happiness is going to happen. And it happens because Chris Batts said so. Okay. And he carries a lot of weight with me. All NDE carries a lot of weight with me. I'll explain that later. But you have to be patient. And this film does that for you. And the funny thing about this, when I was interviewing Chris Batts, I remember I was behind the camera and he's looking into the camera and he's explaining this about how you feel that you're never going to get over it. And I said, I thought he was talking to me. And I said, I didn't tell Chris Batts about my story. How does he know this? And he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to a much wider audience. And stupid me, I thought he was talking to me. And I had realized at that point that a lot of people go through this. It's not just me. And that's what I came to understand.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
How have you changed since making this film?
A perfect question. Okay. They changed me. And let me tell you how they changed me. I think they're very, very special. And there's this silver thread that I see running through the community, and they're so different. And when you really get into it, you just start thinking differently. You start reacting to people differently. And I get this feeling that I don't have to let my guard down with any NDEs. Okay. Now, remember, I met 5 of them in a 3-week period. And I was like, where have you been all my life? Why did it take me over 60 years to meet you? And I was reaching out to this community, and here's how they changed me. I talked to more than 5 NDEs, and I emailed them, and a couple of people emailed me back, and they were helping them. You know, this is a special group. And here's why. This is also tied into how they've moved me and how I've changed. Okay. This is really why I made the film. They had a choice between a world that, according to Sharon Milliman, its beauty is beyond description using the English language. You can say it's beautiful, and beautiful that word does not suffice. Or they had a choice to come back to this cesspool here on earth that we call life. And they chose to come back and work and help people like me and help people like the regular public. They chose to teach. They chose to sacrifice to make this place a better world. And I have immeasurable respect. I have immeasurable love for NDEers because they have the grit to make the decision they made, because a piece of humanity that they could control was at stake. And that was a huge gamble that they took. Okay. That was very, very risky coming back. If you have any question about that, ask Peter Panagore and he'll tell you all about it, Jeff. But you understand what I'm saying? It's an incredible, moving group. And that's why I made it the film. I wanted everybody to know that these people are heroes. They are heroes because they came back and they wanted to help things. I see things totally different, and I can hear each one of them in each different aspect of my life. If I'm having an issue with this, I'll remember, Brooke Grove said this. Or if I'm having a situation with my wife or something like that, I'll remember what Jennifer Dean said. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I have a lot of things to accomplish here. on earth. Okay. I've been giving marching orders from above, somewhere above. And I'm reminded of it every day. Almost every day when I wake up, I'm reminded of my mission. Some things I accomplish, and I'm going to accomplish them better because I've spoken to NDEs. And these missions that I'm on are hard. Okay. Like making this film was hard, but it makes it that much sweeter when you accomplish it because it was a hard thing. And the sad part is that you can't accomplish everything. I know in the beginning of my interview, I said, oh, I can do anything that I want. I can accomplish anything. Well, to a certain point, even if you really, really want it, almost, I can really only think of one thing that I didn't accomplish. But what I've gathered from the NDEers, as well as myself, is that I think that this rock that we live on is very, very important. And I think God has an important mission or purpose for each one of us. And it's here on earth. And this place can be hellish sometimes, but we all seem to be driven to stay here. And I see that from God. And the NDEers, you see, they see the light. They literally see the light, right? They've been there. They've seen the light. When I see the light, it's figuratively, okay? And I want to give somebody that I care about who can't see the light, I want to help them see that. If I see something that they don't see, I want to bring it to them. And I try as hard as I can. Sometimes I'm brash about it. Sometimes I'm gentle about it. And my good intentions are defined as something other than what they are. But when I come back from the knowledge that I've gotten from Peter, from Chris, from Brooke, from Sharon, from Jennifer, it makes all the difference. And I just know, I have to know that some people aren't going to see that light. You know, they're just going to remain in the darkness. And that is the hardest, it's the worst heartbreak that I can imagine when you're trying to reach somebody and you can't reach them. It just breaks my heart. And there's only one thing that you can do. And I think Jennifer Dean was trying to tell me this off the record. But sometimes you just have to let them go. Instead, you surround yourself with people who can see the light. And those people can give me light that I don't see. You know, it's about love and their giving. And I think this film helps people see the light. There's very, very many different ways to interpret this film. This is not the only way.
Are you planning on entering this film in film festivals?
I was thinking about that. I entered a couple of film festivals with my other films, and I don't want to say dog and pony show, but it's a dog and pony show. All I care about is getting this film out. I want as many clicks on my website and reach as many people as I can, because they can see the pearls of wisdom that these 5 people do. Now, granted, I've been told about forgiveness and the importance of being loved oneself, other than Sharon Milliman and Jennifer Dean. Okay. But look where it came from, Jeff. It came from 5 people who had a glimpse of what's in store for us. I therefore have to magnify that message, that insight, and take it as fact rather than a mere tidbit like, oh, maybe this is an advice that I should heed, like from a friend. No. When it comes from the NDEers, it gives an extra oomph to the message, right? And that's much more that I'm interested in translating, rather than having it in a contest. And, you know, I'll tell you something about this. I'm upstairs at the moment, but downstairs in my living room, I have a huge picture. Okay. It's a big frame picture. It's on my wall. And it's of my 5 NDEers. And of course I couldn't get all 5 of them together for one shot because they're all over the country. So, you know, I cut out and did some cut and paste and some blending and everything. And they're all in one photograph. And it's on my wall. And anytime that I get a stupid notion or something negative comes up to me, I just look at my wall and I look at those 5 people and I can hear their words and they guide me. And contest or no contest, this film is all I want to do is get it into people's hands. And I'll tell you another thing. If I'm the only one touched by these 5 people, if it was worth traveling all over the country, if I'm the only one who got something out of this film. But that's not true, because I have a feedback page on my website, which begs to differ. I have a lot of people who were very, very much touched by this film that go, I'm not scared of death anymore. I lost my mother and now I don't feel so bad. Oh my gosh, I've always wondered about love and now I know it's the keystone. They've written me tons and tons of stuff. In fact, there's one guy from Brazil, and I don't know how my film got down to Brazil, but there's this guy from Brazil said, James, what you should do is you should take this film and add subtitles in German, in Spanish, and Italian or whatever, so you can really get it all over the country, or I'm sorry, all over the world. And I said, well, boy, I don't think he would have said that if he meant it. So I must have something on my hand.
What is the running time of this film?
It's 1 hour and 5 minutes, and you'll be riveted the whole time. And I tell the story in a very, very logical way, something that I'm very, very good at. And the hour 5 will pass just like that.
Going forward for your next projects, are you going to do more things that are in spiritual nature, or what do you think?
Do you know how many people have said, you got to do a second NDE film, and I want you to take this approach and whatever. And I'm thinking about it, but it will definitely be spiritual. Okay. The one that I did before this was a bit spiritual as well, the Smith perspective, but in a different way. But I'm a changed man now. Okay. And I believe in the NDE, and I love this experience, and it's going to affect me. It's got to affect my films, right? So I think I just answered my own question. I believe the answer is yes.
Before we finish up, what is your website again?
Well, I'm going to give you the film's website. I have my own website, which actually is linked to that website. But I want everybody to go to www.peaceonbothsidesofthegate.com. Peace on Both Sides of the Gate is the name of the film. And it's just one word.
If you decide to do another NDE film and other NDEers want to reach out to you, how should they approach you?
They can go to that website and it says, contact the filmmaker.
Oh.
And they can write me a note there.
Great.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a couple of them already did. There was this one charming lady from England. She had the most outrageous accent. And I love the English accent. She goes, I want to be in your next film. I forgot. She has a strange name. Do you know what I'm talking about? Ezra or something like that. She's marvelous.
From London?
She's an actress.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know her. Is it Renu?
Yes.
Yes.
Reno. Yeah, she was very excited about it. And a couple of others have. And it looks like I'm going to have to. I don't want to. I want to just keep it open at this point, but we'll see.
Well, what the good thing is also is you get to take a trip to London.
Yeah. You know, I grew up on Monty Python.
And
I love that accent ever since I saw that. And so I'm just in love with the English. And yeah, I've always wanted to go to England. Maybe this will be my excuse.
That would be a wild film, is to make a comedy about NDEs.
Well, you know, they all have this self-actualization vibe that they give off. And humor is part of it. Chris Batts especially. They also have very, very similar ones. I remember similar traits. I went up to Peter Panagore and we're walking through his house and his yard and his grounds, and he's doing this all barefoot. And I was like, goodness gracious, doesn't it hurt to do on the rocks? And he goes, no, it makes me feel the earth. And so 12 hours later, I'm interviewing Jennifer Dean, and she's doing the same thing. She's walking around the house in barefoot. And I go, what is it with these NDEers? But they do have a sense of humor. They have just a wonderful, wonderful feeling that I hope to expose in this film.
Some of the NDE people that I've spoke with say that life on Earth is too serious, that we're too serious. So if you could make a documentary film and make it humorous, that we live too seriously from the NDE perspective, I think that could be really cool.
Well, I was just about to write that down, but I'll get it when you're in your podcast, because that's brilliant. And I'm the perfect guy for that.
Yeah, I think you
because
are.
I have a sense of humor that I've tried to tame at this interview. I didn't want to be ridiculously wacky because we're talking about an incredible subject. But oh my gosh, there's another idea.
Yeah, like, because a lot of them will say also that it over there is more real than being here. This is the dream. So
they did, and
if you could somehow put that to here as a dream, a joke, and the reality.
Oh my gosh,
reality is there.
That's an interesting angle. And of course, the whole key is to do things at a different angle than nobody else has done. And I tell you, Sharon Milliman put my mind at ease. She was telling me, she goes, when she was there, it was very busy. People were running around and stuff, and everything was going at full speed. And I was delighted to hear that, because I had this ridiculous notion of people on clouds playing a harp, and it was really boring. And I said, I don't even want to know it. But when Sharon told me that, I just lit up and I said, oh my gosh, that's a place I can get used to. And it's timeless. They don't have a clock there.
Right.
And that's something. And Peter Panagore was trying to explain it to me. He did it as good as he can, but can you imagine a world that's timeless? That's incredible.
All right, James, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message that you learned from these NDEs?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you the message the same way I end my film. And when you see the end credits rolling, you're going to see the message that they gave us that I accented. It is all about love. As simple as that. It's all about love.
Well, thank you for that message, James, and thank you for being my guest. I really appreciate you, and I wish you massive success with this film.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.